Between 1967 and 1987, Fred West and his second wife, Rose, were responsible for the brutal killings of at least 12 individuals. But those horrific acts were only the start of the dark and disturbing secrets tied to their infamous home at 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester, later dubbed the House of Horrors. In 1969, a 15-year-old Rosemary Letts met a 27-year-old Fred West, beginning a relationship that would soon spiral into a dark and deadly partnership. Despite strong disapproval from her family, the two began dating, and by the time Rose turned 16, she had moved in with Fred and was expecting her first child. They married not long after, even though Fred was still legally wed to his first wife, Catherine Rena West. But Rena was in no condition to challenge the union. Her remains had already been discovered, buried in a rural field, dismembered and concealed in plastic bags. She had become one of Fred's early victims. Fred and Rena shared 2 children, one of whom, Charmaine, would also fall prey to the violence. It is believed that Rose, then just a teenager, was responsible for Charmaine's death, while caring for Fred's children during his time in prison for theft. Rena's fate may have been sealed when she later tried to locate her missing children, an act that may have ultimately led to her own murder. Fred and Rose West were responsible for the deaths of numerous women and girls, including some of their own children. While the exact number of victims remains uncertain, evidence suggests the couple worked together in carrying out at least 8 of these murders. Their crimes went beyond simple acts of violence. They involved extreme cruelty, sexual abuse, and prolonged torture. Survivors among their children reported enduring repeated assaults, physical abuse, and psychological torment, while others showed clear signs of sexual violence. Operating from their home in Gloucester, Rose West worked as a sex worker and later coerced one of Fred's underage daughters into the same exploitation. The couple also subjected multiple children to horrific abuse, with Fred assaulting one daughter as young as 8, a crime Rose shockingly justified. Their victims included not only family members, but also young women hired as caregivers, tenants in their home, and others who crossed their path. The surviving West children were allegedly threatened into silence, with warnings that speaking out would lead to the same fate as their missing sister. In May 1992, Fred sexually assaulted his 13-year-old daughter, Louise, leaving her in severe distress. When Louise confronted her mother, Rose, about the abuse, Rose dismissed her, cruelly blaming her for what had happened. Despite years of intimidation, Louise eventually confided in a friend, prompting authorities to intervene. While the initial case fell apart due to the victim's reluctance to testify, police grew increasingly suspicious, particularly about the disappearance of Heather West, one of the couple's daughters. By 1994, investigators secured a warrant to search their home at 25 Cromwell Street. What they uncovered was horrifying. Hidden beneath the property, in the garden, cellar, and within the house itself, were the remains of multiple young women, including Heather. The victims bore signs of extreme torture, sexual violence, and mutilation, both before and after death. Some bones were missing, likely kept as trophies, and Heather's remains were found with fingernails deliberately separated, suggesting they had been ripped out while she was still alive. Fred later confessed to additional murders, including those of his first wife and stepdaughter. Initially, he insisted Rose was unaware of his crimes, though he later retracted this claim. Before he could stand trial, Fred took his own life in 1995, leaving a suicide note addressed to Rose that hinted at a twisted devotion. Rose was subsequently charged with 10 murders and found guilty later that year. The presiding judge condemned her actions as utterly vile and inhuman, sentencing her to life imprisonment with no chance of parole. After Fred and Rose West were arrested in 1994, their youngest children were placed in foster care, with 4 eventually being granted new identities to shield them from the horrific legacy of their parents. The psychological toll on the surviving children was severe. At least 2 attempted suicide, and Barry West, who was just 7 years old when his sister Heather was killed, died by suicide in 2020 at age 40. Anne Marie, the sole surviving child from Fred's first marriage, shared her traumatic experiences in a 1995 memoir, Out of the Shadows, detailing her harrowing ordeal. As of the most recent reports, she remained the only one of the couple's children who still visited Rose in prison. Her book was just one of many published about the case. Another survivor, Caroline Roberts, also wrote extensively about her abuse. While numerous true crime authors and filmmakers have explored the couple's depravity, among these works, Fred and Rose by Howard Soanes stands out as a meticulously researched account, described by critics as both a chilling chronicle of murder and a disturbing study of twisted devotion. In 1996, the infamous house at 25 Cromwell Street was torn down, its rubble deliberately pulverized to prevent macabre collectors from taking relics. Yet, despite its physical erasure, the horrors that unfolded there continue to haunt public memory, a grim reminder of human cruelty that still captivates and horrifies decades later. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Good night. Take care.